Did you make contact with aliens? Were you taken to another planet, to a mothership? How did they communicate with... Can you tell me what they look like? Can you tell me how many of them there were? Were you given food? Injection? It's important the entire world learns of your experience.
That's enough!
Teachers are alive. They're not books. They are the very living essences of nature itself.
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body, because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
Broadcasting from the Forest Tower Studios in the mossy creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. I'm Joe Roop, and this is Lighting the Void. Voices for verity in this crazy realm of polarity. Good evening, how you doing? It's Tuesday, February the 27th, and the night is cold, and it's raining again here in the natural state. Has been for almost a week now, as the pre-spring rains come down in the natural state, and the moon is waxing on into midnight. Fire up your chakras, sync both hemispheres of your brain together, and shoot your magical beam of light through your third eye tonight with us as we peer into the void between spirituality and science. Thanks for joining us. Glad to be here. It's been a long week since I've seen you guys here at Lighting the Void. Now remember, though, if this is the first time you're listening, this is a live show broadcasted on the Fringe.fm and can be heard on lightingthevoid.com. TalkStream Live, TuneIn, Spreaker, iTunes Radio, Radio God FM, Radio God and more by proxy via the Fringe FM. TalkStream Live call to listen line is 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. You call that number if you run out of data, and you can always listen to the show. I want to say thank you all to have donated to the show, who have shared, who have liked, subscribed, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, the newsletter, everything. It means so much. And if you find anything of value from the show or the Fringe FM, we could use your donations at this point, or your shares or reviews to me are just as valuable. All right, so a lot of new cool stuff coming to Fringe FM. Don't forget to, this week, John Polk's going to be back Thursday. And we got Crow 777 on Saturday. We got some other new shows coming to the network. A lot of new stuff coming, so I want you guys to get ready for that. Man, another one where I slid into the studio. So, yeah, speaking of all you guys that have supported the show, I want to give you a little quick shout out here, okay? Some new supporters on social media. Thank you so much to Nancy. And I hope, if I butcher your name, I apologize, all right? So, but Nancy Reynoso, Yvonne Kaluuya, Ant Cox, Eric Ferguson, and Silver Daniels, thank you guys so much for following. Also, some reviews. Here's some reviews that have been left here. By the way, you guys, if you want to hang out with the cool folks in Spreaker chat, we've got the crowd here. We've got Shift Happens in the chat room, Catalina, Sandra, Yeg, Johnny. I can't scroll up fast enough to get them all. David J. So, yeah, this is where the cool folks hang out. But if you're listening on anywhere else on the network, live on the Fringe FM, TalkStream Live, tune in, wherever you're listening from, that's all good too. We love you anyways. All right. So, yeah. Here's some reviews that were left. I just want to give a thanks to these guys. All right. Nathan Briney says, great resource for knowledge. of the unusual kind, solid and non-judgmental show format. Really allows the guest to shine and the host ask meaningful follow-up questions. Thank you so much for that, Nathan. And Brent Gregory says, love it, love it, love it. This is the kind of radio that I can relate to. I've been listening all this stuff on YouTube while driving around. Going to go get the Fringe FM app so I can listen live. Thank you from Tulsa and me. Wow. Thanks, Brent. I appreciate that. And Michelle Atkins just left one. Michelle Atkins, man, you guys have some last names. I really don't want to butcher it, but I'm going to say it. Michelle Atkins or Akins Safari. I love this radio show. Joe is the best. Always learn a lot and entertaining AF. You guys know what AF stands for, right? And also, AK Cog gave us the 5 stars. Really, man, thank you guys. That means a lot. It really, really does mean a lot to me when I see stuff like that. So when you leave reviews to me, that's just as good as anything. And last but not least, I want to give a warm, very warm thank you to Yeg. Man, you know what I mean? Really, thank you, sir. I really do appreciate your support. And all of you guys. I wouldn't be here without you. And if I keep rattling on, I'll get all emotional. So anyways, let's get on with the show. So tonight, we're going to go beyond the realms of sleep paralysis and investigate the legend of Slenderman. Is it real? Or what? Or who is the Slenderman? Right? An internet legend seems to have come to life in a way that some have feared, and even some have idolized in even the worst way. I'm sure you guys know the story I'm talking about. It is possible that we maybe created this entity, but however, Nick Redfern, author of several awesome books, is going to be joining us to talk about his new book, The Slenderman Mysteries. I haven't been this excited in a while, so if you know that I am started down this spirit science journey, and you have been coming with me along for the ride, and I have definitely fell into the 410 world, and I think I've graduated from private to private first class in the 410 Army. So far, you just got to read. That's all you got to do, so to speak. And I love reading, man. Now that, I used to say, guys, I'll fall asleep when I read books. I just listen to audiobooks. Well, I've learned a little trick now, and you probably do this too. I read maybe a chapter or two a night before I go to sleep, and I've went through Micah Hank's books. He sent me, and I want to tell him thank you as well. Micah sent me Magic, Mysticism, and the Molecule. What a fantastic book. I've got Nick's book here. I've been reading that as well, and it actually is, I'm starting to get to where I can read a little bit more every night, so I'm starting to enjoy reading again. I never would have thought that I would enjoy reading books the way I used to. I already told you guys about download the app from the App Store, Fringe FM, your Google Play or iTunes App Store. Some of you have messaged me asking about a chat room and stuff like that. You know, I'm going to be straight up honest with you. I made that app so it would be really easy for you guys to listen to the Fringe FM. So, like, when I got emails and everything, well, where do I listen to the show live? You know, you got Spreaker links and all these different links. So, with the Fringe FM app, you can always depend on that, even if the other ones don't work. But for the most part, they all work. You know, TuneIn, iTunes Radio, all that stuff works. So, you guys can listen on any of those, but the Fringe FM app will always be there. Look at there. Sam Gillespie just gave us another review. That's so awesome. So go to the website, sign up to the newsletter so we can do a drawing. We're going to do one probably in a couple weeks. Also follow, like, subscribe, everything Lighting the Void. Our little YouTube channel is up to like 800 subscribers, close to it now, I believe. I just throw the archives over there. I'm not real fancy with YouTube. I don't do the keyword thing. I don't hire people to do. I probably should. But here lately, YouTube's been banhammering so many people that I'm almost thinking maybe I should take my archives down. You know, it's kind of freaky what they're doing to people over there. And tomorrow night, we're going to have Wayne McCroy Jr. on, and we're finally going to have an author talking about the alchemical transhuman agenda, pretty much. So that's going to be really cool. This guy's only been, I think, on like one other radio show, so that's going to be a cool show as well. All right, let's get into the news here. Okay, you space junkies, here we go. The moon is going to get its first mobile phone network. Let the space race travel commence, right? The moon will get its first mobile phone network next year. and they're going to enable high-definition streaming for the lunar landscape back to Earth, which is part of a project to back to the first privately funded moon mission. But Vodafone Germany, which is a network equipment maker for Nokia and I think it's car maker, Audi. Yeah, Audi's, said on Tuesday they're working together to support the mission, which was 50 years after the first NASA mission where astronauts walked on the moon. I just can't believe it. I thought it would be Verizon or something, not Vodafone. Not saying anything bad about Vodafone, but they said it appointed Nokia as its technology partner to develop a space-grade network, which will be a small piece of hardware weighing less than a bag of sugar. The companies are working with a Berlin-based company, PTS scientists, on the project with a launch schedule for 2000. Is going to involve it's kind of innovative approach to developing the mobile networks. And when I say innovative, I think that's an understatement. But they're not going to do 5G. A 7-Eleven. That's funny. Catalina just put in the chat room. They need to put a 7-Eleven. They're not going to do 5G because everyone's testing that. But, yeah, pretty interesting. So who's going to be the first astronaut gamer to play their Xbox from the moon on this thing? I think this is incredible. Every time I see a new story like this, I feel like all these. I was just watching Battlestar Galactica, the old series, the other night. I started over again, and it makes me think that, we are coming into some sort of future. We are coming into some sort of reality like that. So I'm super stoked to see private industries taking over space exploration and tech instead of the government. I really am. But are they going to have unlimited talk, text, and data? But when will another thing too, when will the other networks jump on board? I mean, is this like going to kickstart a market of interplanetary cellular networks? Probably not in 2019, but you can bet your butt if Nokia is going to be on the moon, then they're going to be like, oh yeah, we got to get on the moon too. And I just don't want them to pepper that beautiful moon with cell towers, but I think it's inevitable. There's going to be all kinds of junk on that. But who will be the first person to get a cellular call for the moon? I'm sure they're going to have a way to relay that signal back to Earth. Can you imagine talking to someone on the moon on your new phone? If I told you that this would be a reality, I mean, even 20 years ago, they'd probably lock you up and put you in a padded room. But with Bigelow's floating hotels coming up in like 2023 and the new cell services that are about to start in a few years, or let's just say service, but I'm sure others are going to do it. All we need, right, Catalina's fast food chains and 7-Elevens in space, and we won't have to worry about overpopulation anymore. How does that make you feel? I mean, when you hear that there's going to be floating hotels and cell phone services on the moon in just a few years. Just really think about that, because it doesn't sound true when I say it. But this stuff there's really money behind it. There's really people doing this. It's really like a true thing. Science fiction is slowly becoming science reality, and that's a fact. So now the astronauts can procrastinate their social life in space on their phones too, just like we do down here. Pretty wild stuff coming down the line. Speaking of things that you only see in movies, how about some creepy stuff like this? Did you guys see that thing about Hart Island? The bones from mass grave sites are just washing up in the local community. Sometimes, I know I can be a bit insensitive at times, but this to me is a bit comical in kind of a dark kind of way. But more than 1 million people that were buried since 1980 on Hart Island have washed up on the shore since Hurricane Sandy. And the cliffs of Hart Island are sort of exposed. It's like kind of cut off and exposed. And there's bones that are coming out and washing up on the island, man. And no one's doing anything about it. They haven't even started repairs, or they're not trying to fix it. People that are buried out there are from like the poorest and the sickest and the most neglected communities. Probably pretty much forgotten members of our society. I'm just going to guess. And it really is an indignity that they're having to suffer this, even though they're not suffering in death, or life, excuse me. What I'm trying to say is an indignity that they're suffering in death, basically. They're not being respected. But it's just funny to see how society deals with things like, but we got cell towers on the moon. Never mind somebody's late cousin washing ashore. I mean, if you guys will check this place out online, it's extremely creepy and depressing. It looks like whatever that smog place was when Frodo was crossing over to the mountain. That's what it looks like. It's dirty and depressing. It's very sad. Very sad. I was going to play like a horror audio clip, but I decided against it. Because I don't want you to think I'm insensitive. It is kind of funny, but it's kind of sad in a new way, in a little bit of a way, right? All right, moving on. We're going to stay on topic here on this topic of space. I think the space war is coming, and I think in a way that you and I, I'm not talking about aliens here. There's Russian defense companies that have created a plane-mounted laser that can hit satellites now. Now, this is not checked, but it has been released according to an anonymous source quoted by a Russian news agency, and that agency is called Interfax. So on Saturday, Interfax report cited that the source is saying that weapons maker Almaz Anti has completed work on the anti-satellite complex, which includes the laser and associated ground control gear. Now, they're putting this thing on some type of, I don't even know the model of it. It's called like a Bear of A60, but it's a gas laser fitted that's inside a heavily modified cargo plane, kind of. So that's got the U.S. defense officials. They're kind of concerned about it. They put out an article, one little statement that says this. This is what they say. That we assess that Russia and China perceive a need to offset any U.S. military advantage derived from military, civil, or commercial space systems, and are increasingly considering attacks against satellite systems as a part of their future warfare doctrine. Now, this was according to Dan Coates, who is the director of the Office of National Intelligence, and he just told a lawyer that. And so we get emails and crazy reports and messages about stuff and blowing up in the sky and UFOs all the time. And sometimes, man, I really wonder, and I'm sure you do too, if this new space race exploration thing, there's other people saying they're seeing rockets hit the ocean and stuff all the time. But I would like to think that there's not this real weird kind of space war going on behind our backs, but my gut tells me that there's something else involved here. I mean, I'd like to think that all this tech and money and inventions that are going into space are just strictly for, exploration. But, the reality is the military has money and things always go to the highest bidder. So I predict more stuff falling from our skies in the next few years, but we sit around and we imagine a nuclear war and how bad it would be. But just imagine like a space war where countries are dead set on taking out each other's satellites. And communications first. You're out eating a sandwich, having a drink, having a coffee. You look up and explosions are happening. Stuff's falling out of the sky. We already see that every now and then. But it's a scary thought, right? Like if they did actually take out our satellites and communications, what do we got left? We got nothing to bounce off of. Those air combat controllers that are in there hiding, painting targets for us, if they're across seas, they can't get back to us. And so I think that this is valid. I don't know. I guess I'm just scared because and I'm not trying to fear monger. I'm not one of those guys that wants to scare you and sensationalize and everything, but I do want to talk about the truth. And to me, the truth is with this AI thing coming down the road, with all this new space exploration stuff coming as well. You guys see all these robot videos on Facebook every day. I know you see them. Start putting this together. Go 20 years back, 30 years back in technology. Pretend like you were in the 1970s or something. Would you have pictured at all that we have what we have today for the most part? So most of you that are in the chat room and most of you that are listening are going to be alive in the next 20 years. We've all seen what happens in 20 years. We've all seen the compound interest of technology. So, that's all I'm saying. We need to do something about it. I mean, even Elon Musk is trying to do something about it. When the rich are setting out to stop some of that artificial intelligence, letting the military get their hands on it, that's when we got to worry. Anyways, I wanted to get that all in before we go to our first break. I know that was a lot. So, all right. So, I appreciate you being patient with me. When we come back, we're going to delve into the realms of The Slender Man with Nick Redfern. Don't go anywhere. I'm Joe Roop. This is Lighting the Void, live on the Fringe FM. We'll be right back.
And uncover the truth. This is Lighting the Void Radio.
KTLK Digital Broadcasting. We rock the paranormal talk.
Live from New York, it's Saturday night. Live Saturdays on the Fringe FM. The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern. Dark Waters at 4 Pacific, 7 Eastern. Into the Paranormal with Jeremy Scott at 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern. Spaced Out Saturday with Joe Roop, 9 Pacific, midnight Eastern. And S4 with Eric Cooper, midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern. Live Saturdays on the Fringe FM. We rock the paranormal talk. Online at thefringe.fm.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Wouldn't you love to have a really sharp memory? More than ever before, people of all ages are struggling with memory problems and brain fog. Whether your poor memory is age-related or due to the effects of chronic stress, you can now improve your memory while reducing stress with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. That's right, you get 2 products rolled into one. Some ingredients in Calm and Clever enhance memory and help retain newly learned information more effectively, while other ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce stress by maintaining healthy levels of the stress hormone cortisol. Calm and Clever was created by scientist Kurt Hendricks, a principal investigator in 2 NIH-funded studies on Alzheimer's disease. To sharpen your mind and feel calm and centered, try Calm and Clever for 2 months. You'll love the way you feel and think. To order Calm and Clever, call 1-800-728-9948 or visit calmandclever.com. 1-800-728-9948 or calmandclever.com.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio with Joseph Roop. Stay up to date right now, lightingthevoid.com.
Don't feed the Archons. Feed ducks instead. And listen to Shift Happens on the Fringe FM, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific. Cortana out. Quack.
I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll-free at 877-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. Call 877-882-7221 or go to the website angioprim.com.
Oh, you know what I like about me? This is Rich Giordano, host of the Paranormal Code. No, I'm serious. The show's on twice a week now, Sunday and Thursday, on the Fringe.fm and Spreaker, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific. Yeah, it's 2 hours. It's live. And I do a show like you've never heard before. So you're going to come here, you're going to get your information, you're going to be entertained. But you're also going to hear the truth like, you know, you won't forget. Like you've never heard before. And for those of you who've been following, thank you. Thank you for talking me into this extra night. Now I'm on twice. Great. Hey, good for you, right? The Paranormal Code. This means something.
This is Lighting the Void Radio with your host, Joseph Roop. It's the show about truth-seeking and freeing the spirit, shattering your limited beliefs, revealing hidden truths, and much, much more.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. Thanks for sticking around. Don't forget, tomorrow night we're going to be talking about the alchemical transhumanism agenda with Wayne McCoy Jr. Yeah, that's going to be a cool show. I'm finally going to get an author of one of those books to be on. So let's bring on our guest, Nick Redfern. Now, we've talked about this before, sleep paralysis. It happens to some more than others. But what do you do when you feel wide awake and you can't move? We've had many conversations about this, but what do you do when you see hunched over you in the shadows this big 10-foot-tall entity with like spider-like limbs, dressed in an old black suit? The entity has a pale face and missing eyes, nose, ears, and mouth. You try to scream out, but when you finally do get to yell, it evaporates, and you just had an encounter with what people are calling the Slenderman. Now, what is the Slenderman? What began on the internet has moved into other realms, it seems. Is the Slenderman a tulpa? Is it a thought form? Is it an elemental? Is the internet turning against us in a benevolent way? Nick Redfern's here to talk to us about that with his new book, The Slenderman Mysteries. And Nick Redfern is a full-time author and journalist specializing in a wide range of unsolved mysteries, including Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, UFO sightings, government conspiracies, alien abductions, and paranormal phenomena. He writes regularly for the London Daily Express newspaper, 410 Times, Fate, and UFO Magazine. His previous books include Three Men Seeking Monsters, Strange Secrets, Cosmic Crashes, and the FBI Files, among his many exploits. He's got over 40 books. Redfern has investigated reports of lake monsters in Scotland, vampires in Puerto Rico, werewolves in England, aliens in Mexico, and sea serpents in the United States. He travels and lectures extensively around the world. Originally from England, he currently lives in Dallas, Texas area. You can visit his website at nickredford410.blogspot.com. Nick, welcome to Lighting the Void for the first time, man. It's awesome to have you here.
Well, thanks, Joseph.
No problem, brother. It's cool. I haven't been this excited since Whitley was on the show because, like I was telling you during the break, I'm starting to fall in love with reading all over again. When I was a kid, I used to read those. You remember those Goosebump magazine books, right? That was the thing to read back in the day. But yeah, I'm starting to get back into reading. So, yeah, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem at all.
So, what got you interested in the Slender Man?
Well, it's one of these subjects where, you know, as you said in the introduction, it began as sort of like an internet creation, and I didn't really sort of pay that much attention to it at the time, you know, because it was just sort of a bit of fun on the internet. It wasn't anything sort of paranormal. But I sort of really got interested within a year when people claimed to have seen the Slender Man in the real world, where that takes it to another level, where you have this thing that started out as just like an internet meme almost, but then changed into something where people saw it in their bedrooms, like you mentioned just now with sleep paralysis, or they saw it in the woods outside the home. So clearly, there'd been a shift in reality somehow. So that's when it sort of really caught my attention and got me involved and interested in it. And so I followed it over the last few years. And one of the things that sort of surprised me, that other than one guy named Robin Swope, who wrote a book called Slenderman From Fact to Fiction, other than Robin, nobody had ever sort of written about the subject to any significant length. So I thought, well, sort of almost 10 years after the Slenderman story first surfaced in 2009, I thought, well, why not now sort of put something out that essentially describes the last 10 years or so and how and why it's gone from being an internet creation to something that's supernatural, really.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I looked in the beginning of your book and seen all the, the research you did, the interviews that you did, the just the extensive research on the subject. I was really impressed because, I seen my son playing Slenderman on Minecraft. Like, maybe, I don't know if it was Minecraft, but it was a video game that had Slenderman. And I was like, this was a long time ago. And I was like, what is that? And he's like, oh, Dad, that's the Slenderman. You don't know? And I was like, I have no idea. And I looked into it, and it's all the rave, right? And so now, apparently people are seeing this thing during sleep paralysis. And it does make me wonder about thought forms. I don't really understand Tulpas that much.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can talk about that. But people probably be sort of interested first to sort of know what the Slenderman actually is and how it came to be created. Yeah. And so I'll give you sort of a background on that. It sort of all began in the summer of 2009, specifically June 2009. And there's a website called Something Awful, and they have these contests where, people can... well, in the case of the Slenderman, there was this contest to see who could come up with sort of the creepiest character for the internet era. So, in other words, it was a case of people sort of putting their imagination together and trying to create, sort of a next generation Freddy Krueger, or Jason, that kind of thing. And one of the people who sort of took up the challenge of this contest was a guy named Eric Knudsen. And Eric Knudsen is the guy who essentially created the Slenderman, in the sense that he came up with the name, he came up with the image. And again, for people who may not fully know, the Slenderman is sort of this 7 to 9 foot tall human-looking figure, but with arms that sort of hang down to its knees, very skinny and tall, and it wears this black suit, white shirt and black tie, and its face is sort of missing the eyes, the nose, the mouth and the ears, and there's just sort of little shadows where they should be. So it's like a faceless face, and it has these a pair of actually not a pair, but 2 or 3 pairs of like octopus-type tentacles coming out of its back. So, it does look sort of memorable and weird and creepy. Now, what happened was that Eric Knudsen uploaded his story for the Slenderman to Something Awful, and then from there he created a couple of photographs, where he sort of inserted the image of the Slenderman into these pictures. They're like black and white pictures showing groups of kids with the Slenderman lurking behind in the trees. And it sort of demonstrated, that in the stories, the Slenderman was like hostile and dangerous to children. And for reasons that really aren't clear to this day, although quite a few people took part in this contest, the Slenderman was the one that really captured everybody's imagination. And literally within days and weeks, people were writing their own fictional stories about the Slenderman and uploading them, and with their own artwork and photographs, Photoshop photos, that kind of thing. And then there were blogs set up and forums and chat rooms. Wikipedia page, all sorts of things. And so within literally a couple of weeks of being created as just sort of this creepy creature for the internet, a bit of entertainment, it became like a huge phenomenon where you had literally around the world hundreds of thousands of kids kind of fascinated by and fixated on this character, the Slenderman. And that went on like that with kids and people writing stories, uploading them, and adding to the myth of who he was and giving him sort of a background history, that kind of thing. And it was all just a bit of fun. But what happened was that a few months after that, that's when people started to claim to see the Slenderman in the real world. And as you said, sometimes in like sleep paralysis, other people, though, claim to have actually seen it. They felt sort of compelled to go to the bedroom window as if something was calling them, and they'd look outside and they'd see the Slenderman sort of lurking in the trees on their property, that kind of thing. And that leads into the issue, as you just mentioned, of what are known as thought forms and tulpas. Now, tulpa is a Tibetan word for thought form. That's the closest translation into English is thought form. And the idea of a thought form is that the human mind, if enough of us focus on one thing, whether deliberately or just in your subconscious, if there's not just, we talk about 5 or 10, but hundreds of thousands of people are focusing on one thing constantly and obsessing about it, drawing it, talking about it, dreaming about it, that the power of the human mind can actually create like a real world version of the fictional creation. And that's one of the big theories as to why now people are seeing the Slenderman, because what's happening in the theory is that you have literally, the figures are incredible, for people who follow the Slenderman. It's in 7 figures. It's not even, hundreds of thousands. It's literally in the millions. And so you have all these kids focusing on the Slenderman, and inadvertently, not deliberately, but inadvertently, by focusing so much of their attention and their imagination and their dream state and everything else on it, then suddenly the Slenderman becomes like self-aware, and it strides out of the imagination into the real world in kind of like a semi-physical phantasm type state. So it's like, the human mind, the collective human mind of millions of people can create something, and it steps out of the mind and then becomes sort of independent of the creator, if you like.
Yeah, I had the Daniel Joseph on the show, who was the student of Daskalos, which they called the Magus of Strovolos, and he would say that we would create thought forms and elementals, and they would actually be a real thing. And the problem was, and this is what I'm going to ask you about this, is you couldn't get rid of them afterwards.
Well, that's actually one of the sort of more disturbing aspects of these things. It's kind of like when you open a door. It's easy to open a door and let something in, but it's not always necessarily that easy to close the door, when the thing has got it wide open. But basically, when the extra part of the story is that when the thought form is sort of fully created and independent of the creators, which would explain why people see it in their bedrooms or lurking in the woods, the theory is that the thought form, obviously now it's created and it's got this lease on life, it can then essentially, it doesn't want to go back to having no kind of existence. It's just suddenly being brought into existence, and it wants to stay in that position. It wants to attain that position. And so the thought form then turns on the creator, and that can be by threatening them, menacing them, invading their dream states, which we've seen happen on a number of occasions, just terrorizing people, and as a means to, number one, to essentially threaten them that you will not destroy me or else, that kind of thing. But the other theory is that tulpas, thought forms, that they survive, that whereas we eat food, and drink liquid to survive and to live, the theory is that with thought forms, they feed on high states of human energy. So, in other words, the theory there is that with the with the Slenderman and all these other thought forms, they often appear for people and terrify them. And why do they terrify them? Because when they terrify the person, you've got all these sort of negative energies, adrenaline pumping around your body, stress chemicals, and the theory is they feed on that negative energy, kind of like the equivalent of a fictional vampire. You know, in the movies, the guy with the cloak and the fangs, attacks a beautiful girl and drains her of blood, Right. It's kind of like that, but we're talking about a psychic vampire where you're not drained of blood, but you're drained of a form of energy. And so, in other words, that may explain why a lot of people have seen the Slenderman and other thought forms. They get sick. There's some cases where they've lost weight, they've become anemic, they've got no energy, they look pale, and it's literally because they're being bled dry, of energy. So that's one of the other theories, that the Slenderman appears specifically to scare and terrify people, and then it can feed on that state of fear.
So have you had any experiences with fear like that in your life, where maybe in sleep paralysis or in a paranormal investigation?
Yeah, I actually had sleep paralysis twice, and one was like really vivid. It was nothing to do with the Slenderman, but it was, I don't mind talking about this because it acts as kind of like a bit of a caution for people. Yeah. There was a period in sort of the late 90s through the early 2000s when I did this quite a lot, tried to perform rites and rituals to try and manifest something to come through, which, with hindsight, it can be quite reckless, and I actually don't recommend people do it unless your mindset is in a mode where you feel you personally have the strength to get rid of it, which I did. But you only have to be sort of a little bit unsure of yourself and something along those lines. And people who like that, or a bit sort of weak-willed or whatever, they're the ones who really can get into trouble when the things get their claws into them. But for me, I also try to, sort of summon them essentially, but also to be aware that I would also be able to create like the image of a wall to keep them away too. Now, at the height of doing all this, this was when I was living just outside of Beaumont, Texas, down in South Texas, or Southeast Texas. And I was living in actually a little town just outside Beaumont called Nederland. And I had a couple of weird experiences of sleep paralysis. One was just of like a shadow looming over me, and I couldn't move. But the far more vivid one, the house where me and my ex-wife lived at the time was a duplex, so I had like two on either side, and there was a long corridor. And I remember being sort of semi-awake and just knowing that there was something dangerous coming down the corridor. And it came in the room, and it had like a monk's cloak on with a hood. But the face was like a wolf, but it was upright like a man. So, it kind of created images of like a werewolf kind of thing. And it was making these sort of, it's hard to describe, but it was like growls, but it didn't sound like a dog would growl. It was more like, if you imagine a language spoken in growls, that's what it was like. That's the best way I can describe it. It didn't sound like random growls. It sounded like words, but growled, but words I couldn't understand. And I had to sort of force myself and fight to sort of break out the sleep paralysis. And when I did, it was gone. And that's typical in all of these, sleep paralysis situations. You have the sense of menace, the sense of something coming towards you, and a feeling that you're either semi-paralyzed or completely paralyzed, and you have to just fight and fight to break it. So, I do believe, because I've experienced it, that if you go calling on these things and try and summon it up, they kind of, it's almost like they pick up on like an alarm bell or a burglar alarm. Something tips them off, and they know someone's trying to contact them, and then they kind of turn the tables on you, because they're, in most cases, they're pretty much always negative and dangerous. I've never heard of anybody who's had a sleep paralysis situation where it's positive, or good. So I think all these things they may actually all be the same thing, and possibly, they can appear in different ways to different people. Someone sees a werewolf, somebody sees a Slenderman, someone sees the black-eyed children, somebody sees the Men in Black, someone sees a ghost. It may be that the creature, the thought form, maybe manifests in something that in your subconscious is something that, your worst nightmare. Maybe it was when you were a little kid, you had nightmares about ghosts or werewolves. So, it picks into your subconscious and appears in the worst image that, is for you.
In your research about this, did you find any because we talk about this, that children, and as a child, I was extremely messed with in the dream world and had to deal with a lot of really bad fear situations like you're explaining about. And it seems to me like, I could be wrong, but it seems like children get messed with a lot. And I don't know if that's a generational thing. Or...
Yeah, I don't know if it's so much a generational thing. My personal thought on why kids have so many of these experiences is because, it doesn't matter if you live in the US, the UK, where I'm originally from, Russia, Germany, China. We're all human at the end of the day. And I think, you could look at kids all around the world. What they have, when you're sort of 3 years old, and you start to get sort of self-aware and whatever, 2 or 3 years old to when you're about 6 or 7, your imagination is really hyper. We think of things when you're little kids, and although it's imagination, you really believe it's real. Like another parallel, I mean, you could speak to kids, like I said, in the US, the UK, Russia, anywhere, and I bet all of them would have fears of things under the bed or in the closet. It's not like an American phenomenon, you know what I mean? It's for some reason, kids everywhere, get frightened. They go to bed at night and the closet door's not quite shut and it's dark and what's in there, they worry they get out the bed, something's going to grab their ankle, that kind of thing. And now when you're a little kid, your imagination really buys into that totally. Then as we get older, we kind of lose that really deep imagination, and a lot of people say, well, it's just nonsense. Of course there's nothing in the wardrobe. But when you're a kid, that imagination is so strong. And I think these creatures can tap into the human imagination, and it's much easier to essentially invade the mind of a child because a child's mind is full of wonder and imagination, and it's harder for them to get into us because people either lose that belief in the imagination, so that stops them, or, we're mentally and physically stronger to prevent them. So I think that's why kids get attacked more, because they're wide open to so many things that it's like just leaving the front door unlocked, at night, that kind of thing.
I think you're right about that. I think that children are getting fear programmed from a young age because they're so, like you say, susceptible to it, that they want to instill this program into them or something. But I've had the same experience you're talking about because I messed around with astral travel, Nick, and I thought it was something that I could do. And, I'm listening to all these books and I'm doing it. Okay, here comes the sleep paralysis and the vibration. And I had a few cool experiences, but one night I had this thing hovering over my face. And just like you said, I was so full of fear. I didn't overcome it. I was really, because it surprised me, and it was right in my face. And I would just turn my head and was like, oh, God, what is that? And I made this loud scream, but it sounded weird, and it disappeared, and I woke up. And that kind of shook me up from doing that stuff anymore. So I can definitely relate to that.
Well, it's interesting you say that at first, you had some cool experiences, because a lot of people say that it starts off good and positive. And I think that's deliberate. It's like... the idea of making it all seem cool as a way to lure you in, and then you do it more and more because you think it's friendly and, benevolent. And then when you're in so far, then it suddenly shows its true colors. And by that time, it's too late. You're already locked in with it,
Do you think that since this is like, magic, if you look at magic, it deals with consciousness, and magicians are always trying to do work in the astral realm. Do you think that maybe there's black magicians that use these thought forms and tulpas against people? I hear people talk about it, but I've never really done extensive research on it.
Well, yeah, I mean, this kind of relates to something what I talk about in the book on the Slenderman, which is called chaos magic. And chaos magic, for people who might be wondering what it is, a lot of people think of magic, you think of a guy on stage pulling a rabbit out of a hat, or, sawing a hot girl in half, that's what we think of as magic today, But there are other types of magic that go back thousands of years, and chaos magic is basically the modern term for a kind of magic that's been around for a long time. The idea of using spells, incantations, rituals and rites to summon something up to essentially achieve a goal in your life. Now, that may be, somebody may be focused on money, somebody on power, somebody on good health. And you might have someone who, wants to perform, or kill someone or make their life hell. So, again, it's very similar to the idea of conjuring up a thought form, or like the Slenderman. In fact, it's almost identical, the idea. But with chaos magic, it's more based around specific rituals and that kind of thing, rather than with the Tulpa, the thought form, where it's just mainly, the imagination's creating it. But, with one of the most sort of the people who really sort of championed this was the famous occultist Aleister Crowley, and he performed all sorts of rituals. He used to have a house on the shores of Loch Ness called Boleskine House, and it's interesting that it wasn't too long after he was at Boleskine House performing all these rituals that sightings increased of the Loch Ness monsters. And some people think that they're not actually flesh and blood animals, that they could be some sort of supernatural creatures in the loch, actually created or strengthened by Crowley's actions in his house right on the shore of Loch Ness. So, you've got a lot of weird stuff like that. But, I mean, there are stories, though, of people using this sort of ritualistic chaos magic to, attack a person, to cause them bad luck, ill health,
right,
et cetera, et cetera. So, it's like pretty much everything in life. There's a good side, a bad side, a light side, and a dark side, and people get sucked into different directions,
Right. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. David J. from the chat room says, does Nick have some perspective on the difference between sleep paralysis and the hypnagogic state, or hypnagogia? He said there's times when I see things without paralysis, but those weren't the most powerful emotionally. Man.
Well, there are. That's a good question, because there actually are different states of what people would call sleep paralysis. I mean, sleep paralysis is sort of the simple term for a lot of different things. Now, in some cases, people see these creatures or these entities in the bedroom, and they're frozen and they cannot move throughout the experience. There are other cases when they can move, to a degree, and there are some cases where the person, the experience suddenly starts and they're able to sort of break out of it immediately. So the experience barely begins before it's actually over. And then you have other experiences where it becomes more vivid, where perhaps the person can smell the creature. There have been a lot of cases where they have this smell of like brimstone or sulfur, which is like, if you look through ancient texts going back hundreds and hundreds of years, the smell of brimstone and sulfur was tied in with supernatural beings and the devil and demons and that kind of thing. So you have people who smell vivid odors in the bedroom. You see other cases where they actually seem to be physically able to interact, where there are cases where people have had bruises on their wrists as the creature has tried to hold them down, or scratches on their face, as if to say, even if it begins in the dream state, it's like the creature can take on a 3D physical form. You know, it literally exits the dream or the sleep state you're in, and becomes temporarily physical. And, you know, I think that's happening I know that's happening according to the witnesses in some of the Slenderman cases. So, and then you have other cases like that one I had where you hear voices and noises. And then, you know, so the most disturbing thing is this kind of sense afterwards that things don't seem right in the house. You know, it's kind of like just a strange feeling that there's something wrong in the atmosphere, but you're just not able to put your finger on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are a lot of different aspects. As I said, some people just see the thing, or they smell it, you know, they get scratched by it. Sometimes, you know, the sleep paralysis can last much longer in some cases than others. Some people get them all the time. Some people get them once or twice in their life. You know, I've had it twice. I know of people who get it like once every couple of weeks, you know, which would be a nightmare for you. I mean, literally a nightmare, you know.
I bet. Yeah, so I heard you on another radio show talking about the community. You know, you said we're all in the same community here. I mean, some of us do radio shows, some of us write books, some of us do magazines and blogs. Even though some don't think it, we are all in the same community. Yeah. And a lot of this is talked about. And it's talked about in kind of an entertaining kind of way, but in this, I get a little bit of hint of a warning here, especially now that I'm talking to you. Is there anything in this community that, if you had to say to this community about, you know, sleep paralysis and playing around with it, would you definitely warn against it? I mean, I know you said that earlier, but I'm just trying to feel your importance level here. I wouldn't
tell people not to do it. I mean, that's not my place, really. What I would say is what I would do is to share with, which I've done tonight, is share with people the experiences I had when I sort of performed these, you know, experiments and how it turned bad. And I would warn people that if you try it, you know, try and summon up an archetypal imagery of, you know, a particular creature, and you focus on it and you bring it through. Chances are it won't be a positive thing, or it may start out like that and quite benevolent for the first 2 or 3 times. Then when it's got its claws into you, then it suddenly changes, you know. So I wouldn't tell people don't do this. I would say just be aware that there are hazards if you do. And a lot of it, the extent to which it gets its grips into you, a lot of it is based on your own personal strength of character or how you react in stressful situations, things like that. So, you know, it can be hazardous. And I knew going into it, it was going to be hazardous. But for me, I also knew that in a strange way, but in a dangerous way, this actually allows us to contact or communicate with these things. But, you know, it's not a great situation. You know, my goal was to hopefully try and understand more what they actually are. You know, are they thought forms created by the imagination? Or when we sleep, are we not just dreaming, but are we kind of astrally traveling to other realms? And do we bring something back sometimes? I think it could be a combination of the two. But I was hoping by doing this, and despite the danger, I was hoping that it would give me some insight into what we're dealing with. But it didn't work like that. It worked where it was just a case of trying to scare the you-know-what of me, you know, right, yeah. and use you, again, like as a vessel to bleed you dry of energy or whatever. So, you know, like I said, like a psychic vampire situation. So, yeah, I mean, all I can do is you know, tell people my experiences and tell them about the very similar ones that friends and colleagues of mine have had, and then, you know, it's down to the individual then as to you know, what they want to do with it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've like I said, I've studied books with Robert Monroe and William Buellman, and you have to get through that state, and they say, oh, it's just fear. All you got to do is learn to they talk about it like it's so effortlessly. Just learn to overcome that fear. And I'm sure they do it because, like you say, they got great will. But from my experience, when I had that moment, I had a moment of weakness, and fear, and it got worse, as you say. It's like almost like, they fed off of it. But we got to go into the first break. We're already halfway through the show, guys, so this is getting interesting. We're going to continue our discussion with Nick Redfern, author of the Slenderman Mysteries. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Dennett from PrestonDennett.weebly.com, and you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Do you or a loved one suffer migraine headaches? Listen to what scientist Kurt Hendricks has to say.
35 million people in the United States suffer with debilitating migraines. If you or a loved one are one of them, you need to know about MigraLief. Hi, I'm Kurt Hendricks, the scientist that formulated and patented the MigraLief migraine formula. MigraLief is a non-prescription dietary supplement recommended by neurologists, pharmacists, and pediatricians to address nutritional deficiencies in both adults and children over 2 with migraines. Try MigraLief for 3 months and see the powerful difference it can make in your life, or get your money back, no questions asked. Go to MIG911.com or call 800-MIG-7354. You can change your life today.
So if you suffer from migraines, don't wait. Call 800-MIG-7354. That's 800-MIG-7354. Or visit MIG911.com.
Natural Health Solutions with Chris and Ronnie.
Hey, Ronnie, how you doing?
Great, Chris.
Now, you're the CEO of GetTheTea.com, right?
Yes, I am.
What is GetTheTea.com? I mean, is this tea you buy in a store?
Well, no, it's not. Life Change Tea is just that, life-changing. Life Change Tea is an herbal tea that gently cleanses your body from intruders.
What do you mean by intruders?
Well, intruders are toxins, chemicals, GMOs, heavy metals, and more. They're in our food, in our water, in our air we breathe.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously.
And Life Change Tea will help you with removing these, as you say, intruders?
That's right, Chris.
Are there side effects with this tea?
Well, you might lose a little weight. When you clean your colon, you lose weight, you feel better, and you have more energy.
Wow. Ronnie, where can people purchase Life Change Tea?
Oh, that's easy. GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea, TEA.com.
Ronnie, I want to thank you for being on the show. People, don't forget, GetTheTea,
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
We are still getting strange on Sundays. Hey everyone, it's me, Dave Cruz, host of Beyond the Strange Radio, letting you know we're on live Sunday nights right here on the Fringe FM. The Strange Sunday saga continues live at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Listen on thefringe.fm or at beyondthestrange.com. Again, that's Sunday nights, 5 p.m. Pacific. See you there.
Tired of talking about the weather? No, Shift. Well, Shift Happens is here to fulfill your desires as you reach that point in life where you crave tantalizing conversation about reality, ufology, the occult, and the conspiracies within, while simultaneously finding yourself desperately in need of your very own theme music, which we've got plenty of that too. So be sure to tune in to Shift Happens every Friday night from 7 to 9 Pacific, right here on the Fringe FM. Because the weather sucks, and you need some theme music.
Hey Fringe FM listeners, guess what? TalkStream Live has just released a new paranormal app exclusively for the paranormal community called Paranormal Radio. Paranormal Radio has a great selection of streaming talk shows dealing with UFOs, the supernatural, sacred geometry, NDEs, and much more, including a network highly recommended, The Fringe FM. You can download Paranormal Radio right now from Google Play and the iTunes App Store.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. You know, there's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com.
Select Joe Roop at checkout at ancientlifeoil.com.
This is Lighting the Void Radio with your host, Joseph Roop. It's the show about truth-seeking and freeing the spirit, shattering your limited beliefs, revealing hidden truths, and
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm Joe Roop. We are live on the Fringe FM. We are here with author and paranormal researcher Nick Redfern. We're talking about the Slenderman Mysteries. And I was telling Nick during the break that I started to even get a little bit of a creepy vibe as I'm talking about this, and the storms kicked up out here in the studio. So, yeah, more goosebumps for me. That happens to me sometimes. But Nick, thanks for being with us on the show, man. This has been a real interesting conversation.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be on the show. Thanks.
Yeah, this question I wanted to ask you, I wanted to kind of go back. Did you say that some people actually saw this thing in reality? Like they saw it with their own eyes, not just in the dream state, or did I hear that wrong?
The Slenderman?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about the Slenderman, you mean?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've got probably 15 or 20 cases where people have said, they've seen the Slenderman, literally like in the woods or outside the fence line by their house. Other people, had sleep paralysis, but managed to break it. And when they were wide awake, it was still in there. It wasn't like it, suddenly vanished as they so often do in these cases. I got a really weird really weird case in the book I talk about where back in the 50s, a guy, at the time he was a young boy, and he said he saw almost like a procession of slender men, like 20 or 30 of them. And this sort of gets to another aspect of the story where even though the Slenderman wasn't created till 2009, it's almost as if, as some researchers think, he actually subconsciously tapped into something that was already existing and unknowingly created the Slenderman in the form of some ancient archetype supernatural being that could have been around for thousands of years. And you do find throughout a lot of mythology and supernatural phenomena and history tales of tall, creepy black figures, sort of shadowy figures. And so in that sense, that might explain some of these other cases. But yeah, there's a lot of reports that relate to literally in the real world, nothing to do with the dream state at all. And I've got one really weird story in the book from a woman I interviewed named Lacey, who's a flight attendant. And like so many people who get interested in the Slenderman phenomenon, it didn't just remain an interest, it became an obsession. And almost everybody, but, particularly the kids who get involved and interested, it does become an obsession. And, it's never good to sort of obsess on anything, really, never mind the Slenderman. But she told me how she was digging into all this, largely online, and, she was just printing off articles off the net and printing paintings and drawings that people had made, and she created like a huge file on the Slenderman, printed off all the chat room chats and forums and things like this. And it was like, at the end of it, I think it was like, I don't know, sort of 500 pages, 600 pages of paper, that she'd put all this together. Wow. And bear in mind that she was doing all this research online. She told me how on 3 occasions, always late at night, she said she saw the image of the Slenderman like a silhouette on her laptop, as if somehow it had got in the laptop. On occasion, it was like the faceless face that he has, like I said at the beginning, it's just a face with no eyes, no nose, no mouth, no ears, just little vague shadows where they should be. She saw that on one occasion. Then on another occasion, she saw the sort of the spindly figure, like the spidery figure. And then on the third occasion, she heard this sort of whispery, raspy voice say, "We're friends now," or something along those lines. And that's when she sort of brought it all to a halt. And she dumped all her papers, walked away from the subject. And Robin Swope, who, as I said, is the first guy to write a book on the Slenderman, she had a copy of Robin's book, and she actually burned it. She literally set it on fire in the sink and burned it, and in like a bowl. And that's, so that's 3 ways you can have these experiences. One is sort of whether in sleep paralysis, and then it becomes something when you're wide awake and it's still there, or you happen to be driving to work, you've got a big obsession with the Slenderman, you see him at the edge of the road or in the woods. And then the third one is like this, the internet angle of sort of, which kind of reminds me a little bit of like, the Matrix movies where, right, you have this sort of internet-based dream world we're all living in the movies, and it's kind of like that a little bit where, you're looking for information on the internet about the Slenderman, and then the Slenderman kind of works its way into the world of virtual reality, So a lot of strange encounters along those lines, yeah.
Well, I had spoken to Thomas Campbell, who's a physicist, and he talks about the out-of-body experience and consciousness, and he's got a trilogy of books that talks about exactly what you said, like, this is all just consciousness, and it's a virtual reality type deal. And this guy's, is a physicist, so I've got to listen to him a little bit, and it makes me wonder how much power our minds have. Like the old Hermetic philosophy, like, are we really? I mean, how much power that we're unaware of that we're doing to ourselves? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and I think it's interesting that. When you look into all this, this angle of virtual reality and the Matrix and dream worlds, it would explain, if we are living in something like a real version of the Matrix, for people who don't know, I'm sure most people do, but if there are a few listening who don't know, in the Matrix, we're all living in this dream world. The world we think's real is actually a dream. And we're really all sort of in these pods feeding electricity to all these machines in the future. We're not really even in the latter part of the 20th century or whatever. We're actually like 200 years later than we think we are. But we've all been placed into this virtual reality dream world of the late 1990s. Now, one of the characters, I've actually got the page up from the book here, so I can read it to you. Lauren Fishburne's character, Morpheus in The Matrix, says to Neo, who's played by Keanu Reeves, he says, "Have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were so sure was real? What if you were unable to wake from that dream? How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world?" Now, we've all had those dreams where it seems so real. And then you kind of sigh with relief when you wake up and you realize it was just a dream. But if you think about it, if that dream was so real and you never woke up from it, you would never know it was just a dream. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, so how do you actually know we're not in a dream? You only know you're in a dream because when you wake up from it. If we're prevented from waking up from that dream, and you have a really advanced dream world which can interact with everybody, it's not your own little dream. We're all interacting in some way with the dream state. Then that would allow us to sort of independently exist. But also, it would also mean that we are still in that dream-like state, and that could allow for manipulation, and it could explain why, like in the Matrix movies, you have these Men in Black type characters, which are called the agents, and they get inserted into the Matrix, and maybe it's something like that, something equivalent, like the Slenderman gets inserted into our dream world in the same way that, if you downloaded something, or uploaded something, it's kind of the same perspective, really.
Well, I noticed that your website is, 4tn.blogspot.com, and I have just, in the past year got into Fort, and it was Jordan Maxwell that turned me on to it. And you talk about that. It does, when you talk about the Men in Black type thing, it does, I really I don't have proof of it, Nick, but I really believe there's something out there that it's keeping us mind manipulated, and it uses fear to keep us that way. That's why I think they do it to children so much, but that's just a theory of mine,
Well, yeah, and when you mention Fort, for people who might not know, Charles Fort, he was like one of the early sort of 20th century people, like 100 years ago, who collected and wrote about weird mysteries of everything, strange creatures, ghosts, strange things in the sky, weird coincidences, just odd things. And he wrote some really good books like Low and Wild Talents, and you still get his books to this day. And so, yeah, I think everybody has a weird occasion now and again when it seems like reality isn't reality. Where somebody has a really weird coincidence. You're thinking about someone you haven't seen for years, and then you run into them, like decades, and then you run into them 10 minutes later in the local store or something.
Yeah.
That kind of thing happens a lot, and it's almost as if reality is playing with you, or unreality is playing with you, and you think, well, that just can't happen, but it did, So
right.
I think there are a few pointers. I don't say we're fully living in a Matrix world, but there are a few things where reality does get blurred from time to time, and things happen which, in just a physical 3D world and nothing else, those things shouldn't happen, but they actually do happen,
Right, exactly. I totally buy into that. I really do. And even Jordan said when he was 19, he had that experience with the alien people that said, hey, read this book by Charles Fort when he was a kid, and told him this is the closest thing to reality. I can't imagine someone telling me that and then going and reading that book. That changes, or the books by Fort, and it changes everything that we've been taught,
Yeah.
But
and
there's
of course,
no proof
the
of
problem
it.
is, well, there's no proof as such, but, there is in the sense if you've had these experiences,
right,
you've had them. So basically that is your proof. It's just, it's not physical proof, but that something's happened to you. And, but the problem is, we don't understand it. And of course, the bigger problem is we're sort of, apart from when you're a kid, you're taught not to think about these kind of things, just stupid. Bigfoot doesn't exist, the Loch Ness Monster doesn't, there's no such things as ghosts, et cetera, et cetera. And we're kind of, geared to think when you get older, you shouldn't waste your time on stupid things, you know what I mean? But it's actually not. It's just, that's how we're brought up. We're expected to believe in this when you're sort of 5 years old, but not when you're 25 years old or whatever.
Yeah, you're right. That's true.
And when people do have those experiences, then because of the way we're primed not to think of these kind of things or think it's nonsense, when people do have these experiences, they kind of wrap it up inside themselves and don't tell people. And that's the worst thing, because there's a lot of people who've had similar experiences, and it's always good to sort of share and know that you're not alone. And I think that people can become isolated because, you can't, I understand somebody, going out for dinner with their friends, all 35 years old, shall we say, and one suddenly says, "Oh, I've seen the Slenderman." Most people are probably reluctant to do that, because of the reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the problems. People, it becomes tied up just with them. They got no one to talk to. They're sitting at home worrying if it's going to come back, and then they kind of spiral into that, that paranoia and fear. So.
But that's what happens, like you mentioned earlier, the community. When I go to these conferences, and I've just started doing it in the past couple of years, I set up a little radio booth, and I get to talk to people like Travis Walton and people like you. I've never ran into you, but I hope I get to one day, man, because that's going to be really cool. And then you got all these other people that are at the conferences, and they come up to you and they tell you their stories so openly. And then you go back to the real world. It's like, the one parallel that I see happening to everybody is, like you say, the glitches in the Matrix or the synchronicities,
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I mean...
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the things that crops up in the Matrix movies, and which, you could say is evidence in our world of like a Matrix-type world, is when people have deja vu. When you have that, it's like really weird. It's like, how can you think you've gone through this almost word for word or place to place, when it clearly couldn't have happened? Or, what if there really is a glitch in the Matrix and, something's gone wrong, and so they have to rework the dream state that you were in 2 weeks earlier or 5 years earlier, that something's got to be tweaked, and then your mind is filled with something that happened 5 years ago, but it's suddenly playing out again, So I do sometimes think that deja vu could be kind of evidence, in a way, of somebody that's controlling the Matrix is tweaking things when, there's a glitch, kind of the same way that Norton or Kaspersky, corrects something if it can on your laptop or whatever, so.
Right, yeah. I get that, I really do. Hey, in your research, Nick, did anybody ever say that they were out and they were with their friends or wherever, and there was just say there's more than one person, and one person saw the Slender Man, but the other person didn't? Does that ever happen?
Honestly, not sure. I don't think I've got any cases like that. I would have to check if any friends have. What I would say is, for the most part, when people see the Slender Man, most of the time they're alone.
Okay.
Now, I'm not. Well, let's say they're alone. Most of the cases all the cases I've got, it's just one witness. Now, there's one case I talk about in the book, which actually predates the Slender Man, but it's kind of really weird because when you had back in 2014 the stabbing by the two girls on their friend in the town in Wisconsin called Waukesha. Well, Waukesha has a history of weird creatures, just like the Slender Man. People think it began with that attack in 2014. It didn't. One of the people I interviewed for the book was a guy named Mike Huberty, and Mike, I interviewed him for the book, and he told me how he had an experience with this tall, skinny, shadowy, dark figure in the woods, just like 2 miles or so from where that attack by the girls occurred. But this, when he had his experience, it was like 1994. So, and he was with two friends at the time, and all of them saw it. So there are a few cases like that where multiple witnesses will see it, but for the most part, it's just one person.
Yeah, I was just wondering, maybe because consciousness could be communicating with one person, but the other person's on a different level, so I didn't know maybe if that had ever happened. But those stabbing cases, which was going to bring me to my next question, Nick. Do these entities, do they want to be worshipped or something? I mean, what is their agenda? If they are becoming self-aware, what do you think their agenda is?
Well, that's part of it is, if they're self-aware and they realize that they've been created, they want to hang on to life like all of us do,
Yeah.
But the big difference is that the thought form, if you know how to do it, it can be deconstructed. It can be destroyed. Now there are two ways. One is by essentially sort of using your mind to literally try and destroy it. By visualizing it falling apart or becoming, its skin falls off or it becomes, transparent and then it's gone. That is one of the sort of the key ways to try and get rid of it, is to focus on you destroying it in your mind. Now, the other way, which is kind of interesting, is one of the theories is that in addition to the Slenderman and all these other things having to feed on emotion, part of it also relates to they get stronger the more that people believe in them, and vice versa. So if you can teach people to stop thinking about it and stop believing in it, that alone can disintegrate the tulpa. But the problem is, it's not that easy. When somebody says stop thinking about the Slenderman or stop thinking about the black-eyed children or whatever, the first thing you do is you think of them, and it's extremely difficult when you've had sort of this huge obsession or fascination with the Slenderman. It's incredibly difficult for people not to think about it because you're thinking about trying not to think about it, Yeah. It's like a vicious circle kind of thing. So, but if you can do that, people find that if they forget about it, they move on, then the entity usually does as well, because its main source of energy and life is walking away from them. So they're forced then to go to somebody else.
Well, I think that it's definitely a reality, because if you look at the progression of the Slender Man, like you say in your book, and I'm about halfway through it, but if you look at the progression, like you're speaking about, first it's somebody creates it, the next thing you know, people are writing about it, then it's on the internet, and then it's in people's dreams, and then now you got people going out to the woods, and then it becomes an obsession. Now, that is a very odd thing if you think about it. I mean, we've all obsessed about cars and, whatever, spin things, but this idea actually got someone to murder somebody. I mean, I'm not saying that the people that did it weren't responsible. Obviously they were. The judge ain't going to say,
it was almost murder. It was almost murder.
Well, yeah, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think the judge is going to say, well, it was Slender Man, so you're off the hook. But it's... No,
that it wouldn't happen. No.
But obviously something progressed, and it just kept getting bigger, and that's kind of a scary thought.
That's actually what happened with the two girls. What happened was, as I said, this little city in a suburb of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, called Waukesha, on May the 31st, two young girls, 12 at the time, attacked in a nearby park and almost killed one of their friends, or former friends now, obviously. But the two girls had really become sort of obsessed with the Slender Man phenomenon, and they had that classic obsession that so many people do, where they feel they're pulled in almost like a magnet, and they kind of went from just reading the stories and thinking about it, talking about it, to fully believing that there is a Slender Man. Now, whether or not, somebody might think that's due to paranormal reasons, or that, their minds were so caught up that the, reality and unreality got blurred, and, and then they crossed the line in the worst way possible. But, of course, in a court case, you're not going to get a discussion of paranormal issues for why they did it, because, a court and the police, their job is to look at it from the perspective of an attempted murder, and were they, in their normal state of mind, in the sense that they knew what they were doing, or, was it a psychological issue which would require them to have sort of, hospitalized rather than prison time? And now, just recently, it's basically almost over, but the girls are going to be, they were 12 when they did the attack. They're like coming up to 16 now, or thereabouts, and they're going to be well into adulthood, 40s, 50s when they get out. But, there are people who have followed it from that perspective of, a paranormal angle of the Slenderman getting into their minds. Now, of course, as I said, that you would never get that in a court case. It would just cause uproar, and the case would probably collapse. So I'm sure both sides were very careful not to address any possibility at all of a paranormal aspect to this, which is understandable. But I mean, what that case did, that really, even up until 2012, even though the following for the Slenderman was huge, there really weren't many people outside of that community which had heard of the Slenderman. But when the attacks occurred, that was on Fox News, CNN, MSN, New York Times, Washington Post, everybody covered it. And so that really then opened the Slenderman phenomenon to even more people. People, see this headline, girls attack friend in the name of the Slenderman. People are like, what the hell's the Slenderman? So, you had an entire new audience coming along, which, again, provoked more and more sightings. So it's like a cycle that just keeps going on and on,
Right. Spooky stuff, man. This is some spooky stuff. We're going to take our last break here, guys. We got about 30 minutes left here. We're here with Nick Redfern, the Slenderman Mysteries. You guys stick around after these words. We'll be right back.
KTLK Digital Broadcasting. We rock the paranormal talk.
Hi, it's Jeremy Scott, and I'm the program director for the network you're listening to right now. We are the Fringe FM. You've probably noticed some changes around here lately, but what we really want is to hear from you. If you like it, hate it, or you want some more, let us know. Email talkback@thefringe.fm. Leave us your thoughts by calling 501-777-5631 or message our Facebook page at The Fringe FM. This is the new Fringe FM. We rock the paranormal talk.
Who were the real ancient Egyptians? What is it about ancient Egypt that captivates us all? The critically acclaimed series Magical Egypt is back with all new episodes. Let Chance Gardner and company take you on another adventure through Magical Egypt in the new series Magical Egypt 2. Magical Egypt 2 attempts a forensic reconstruction of the science of the ancients through a study of ancient aesthetics. Also, the best researchers and authors in the field like John Anthony West, Graham Hancock, Laird Scranton, Robert Duvall, Lon Maladuquette, Aaron Sheik, and more join together to explore the topics of the esoteric and the hidden messages of the ancient Egyptians. Just go to magicalegypt.com right now and put in the code word FRINGE and get 10% off any download or order, including the groundbreaking original Magical Egypt series, as well as the new episodes in Magical Egypt 2. Also, check out the great work and the companion series at magicalegypt.com. Click the banner on the Fringe FM or go to magicalegypt.com and use the code word FRINGE and get 10% off your order today while it lasts.
Greetings, I'm Space Boy. I started writing music at an early age, inspired by such synth stylings of the Pet Shop Boys, Erasure, Kraftwerk, Art of Noise, and 8-Bit. I have crafted my work into a hybrid of synth pop with modern electronica rock music of today, with pounding beats, high-energy arpeggios, soothing orchestral moods, and rock and roll. Space Boy will surely be a part of anyone's music collection. So head on over to spaceboymusic.com and get you some cool stuff.
Ever seen an extraterrestrial? It can be hard to believe they exist unless you've seen one for yourself. What if I told you I've seen them my whole life, but have never had a witness who shared the encounter with me? Now, what if I told you I saw 4 of them, 2 with blue skin, and there are over 20 witnesses to this CE5 event? my new book, The Blue Beings, Visitation at the UFO Conference, documents actual accounts from real witnesses, many of which have gone on record to attest to this otherworldly reality. Be a part of the quantum paradigm shift that is taking place right now. Go to johnpolkmedia.com to get your copy of The Blue Beings, Visitation at the UFO Conference, on sale right now at johnpolkmedia.com. That's JOHNPOLK media.com.
Kids, don't drink in park. Accidents cause people. This has been a PSA brought to you by your friends at Shift Happen and The Fringe FM.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
You guys rock! Live weekdays on the Fringe FM. It's Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Monday through Friday at 9 Pacific, midnight Eastern. The Fenton Perspective with Lori and Fenton. Mondays at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. Project Compass with Mark Eddy and Dave Cruz. Mondays at 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern. Lighting the Void with Joe Roop. Tuesdays and Wednesday nights at 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern. Big Picture Science from the SETI Institute. New Tuesdays at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern. The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable. Wednesdays at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern. The Kurt Green Hour. Wednesdays at midnight, 3 a.m. Eastern. The Paranormal Code with Rich Giordano. Thursdays at 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern. Shift Happens with Gigi and Cortana. Friday at 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern.
Is it live?
Live. Weekdays on the Fringe FM. We rock the paranormal talk. On the Fringe FM app, TalkStream Live, tune in, and online at thefringe.fm.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience, Cosmic Passport.
Live Sunday nights at 9 Pacific, midnight Eastern on the Fringe FM. We rock the paranormal talk.
Hi, this is Ryan Gable, host of the Secret Teachings radio show. If you are interested in ancient knowledge and hidden mysteries, as well as a unique and balanced perspective on conspiracies, symbols, and the occult, then join me every Saturday, Sunday, and Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on The Fringe.
Paranormal. Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal.
The U.S. military holds the ability to time travel.
Jeremy Scott asks the questions that we're all dying to know.
Wow, that's a remarkable question.
Watch your step. Hide under your blankets.
The show that is going to make you think.
Prepare yourself for what you're about to hear.
This transmission is coming to you.
You're riding into the paranormal.
Live Saturday nights at 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern on KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Every region of the world and most countries can go back in their history and trace their origins, traditions, and religions to a creator god or an angel from the sky, the stars, heaven, or even underground from the underworld. This is the common story of extraterrestrials seeding our planet. My name is Reverend John M. Polk. I am an international metaphysical minister, a Reiki master teacher, and a medium. My book is Yahweh, the Biblical God, is an Alien. The premise of my book is that there is a real God, and that Yahweh is a creator God alien who is indicating he is ready to reveal his alien origins to humanity at this time.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. I was carrying on a conversation with Nick. Man, what a cool guy, Nick. Thanks for coming out to the show, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
I almost went right through the break talking to you, man. But this has been a great show. I just got a few more questions just about the Slender Man. You know, I don't when you look at the title, you think the Slender Man. Okay, what is this? Is this a? What do you say to naysayers? That's my big question. When people come to you because you're a vet in this field, and they're like, "Whatever, man." The skeptic. Do you just ignore them, or do you actually carry on a conversation with them and try to convince them about some of this stuff?
Yeah, I'll have a conversation. I don't feel intimidated. I mean, I found early on, when I first got into writing in my 20s about all this stuff, you got to develop a thick skin, and I get in a lot of arguments and fights with people, but that's how it is. I mean, I sort of tell it as I see it, and if somebody says this is garbage or I don't believe it, I say, well, here's the data. If you don't, if you're not happy with it, here's the guy's name. Go and speak to him personally and see what you think he's saying. I think the responsible part is that if you firmly believe in something and you think you've got data to back it up, if somebody says, well, this is nonsense, it's just complete crap or whatever, the responsibility is on our part, my part, to hit back, and forcefully to ensure that you uphold your position and people know where you're coming from, and that you won't just sort of cower in the corner because some debunker said something you didn't like. That's the worst thing you can do,
Right. Yeah. It's real easy to say, well, that's just a bunch of bull, because that's what they use. It doesn't logically make sense, or you don't have proof. Yep. And I've had my own conversations about proof, but I've also seen people that have said that, and then they have their first experience, and their whole world has changed. They're not the same anymore. But I guess I wanted to ask you a little bit about the nature of Slenderman, because that's what I'm curious about. I know it seems to have some type of, like you said, it wants to keep living. It wants to keep feeding off the energy that it's getting. Did anybody ever hear it say anything? I know it doesn't have a mouth, but has it ever communicated with anybody?
Well, the only ones I can think of, there was that girl I mentioned, Lacey, the flight attendant, where she heard like this sort of low, sort of raspy voice say, it was something along the lines of, I'd have to check in the book, but it was along the lines of, we're friends now, or now we're friends, that kind of thing. Now, as far as other people sort of communicating with the Slender Man, it's more sort of done on like a telepathic way, or as if the person suddenly visualizes the words in their head. It's like the thought has come from nowhere. It might be a case like, they don't hear the Slender Man say, come down the stairs and out to the door and through to the woods, that kind of thing. But they get this sudden feeling that something is telling them to do that, whether they can actually hear, or it's almost like an urge that you don't really understand. So I'm not, as far as I can remember, I'm not aware of anywhere, people have seen the physical Slender Man in front of them, and threatening them with words. But there are quite a few where the person felt that words, or just an urge was being put in, like an order, if you like, was being put into their mind to do something. So it communicated that way, but not vocally. So.
Do you believe in possession, Nick? Like demon
possession?
Yeah,
I do. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that happens, but I'm always sort of cautious as to how I describe it, because when you talk about possession, typically most people think of like demonic possession. And while I do think there are supernatural things that can literally sort of get into people's minds, if you say they're demons, it kind of creates just one image, you know what I mean? Sort of these sort of demonic things from hell, and then you're thinking of like horns and forked tails and all that kind of thing. So I do believe that there are dangerous, hostile things in and around us, in other realms of existence, sort of multi-dimensions. Now, one person would say, well, that supernatural creature in a multi-dimension is actually a demon from hell. And somebody else would say, well, it's actually not a demon from hell, it's a supernatural being from a multiple reality, which can be explained by quantum physics or whatever. So, when you mention sort of possession and demons, it sort of creates a belief system depending on if somebody has a religious background or somebody has a science background, people would, that they all agree on there's a sense of possession, but you have different angles as to what a demon is. Is it a literal demon, or is the demon sort of a fictional image to try and explain something that thousands of years ago they couldn't fully explain? Do you see what I mean? So
yeah.
But again, a lot of it comes down to when possession, demons, if you have a religious persuasion or you don't, or you look at it from a science background. But it still comes down to the same thing. I do think there are dangerous supernatural things that have been perceived as demons, at least, and which can get into people's minds. There are enough cases on record where, it's not people looking for attention, where something has got into their mind,
Right. A couple of questions from the chat room here. Joseph is asking, are cases, I think I understand this question, are cases of Slenderman relegated to the industrialized countries more, or I'm thinking if he's asking, are they more around the city areas where there's industry, or are they out in the country more cases?
Well, actually, that is a good question. Now, for the most part, we don't know why this is, and it may be because the original creation of Eric Knudsen was in this, was part of it. He sort of planted the Slenderman in forests and woods, and apart from the sleep paralysis angles, obviously when you're in bed, most people who see the Slenderman in the real world, it usually is around an area of like forest, woodland, or a glade, that kind of thing, where there are substantial trees. So that's one of the areas where they're often seen. Now, in terms of like geographical locations, I mean, the Slenderman has huge followings all around the world. It was created, Eric Knudsen is American. It was created in the United States, but it's everywhere. There are massive followings across Europe. I mean, Germany, for example, has a huge Slenderman following. And, you can find it anywhere. And I think, again, it's this angle of where, we think people in other countries, we don't know anything about them and, anything like that. But really, at the end of the day, people are people, and even though we go to war with some of them and whatever, well, it's often governments that pitch us against other nations or whatever. But the people, the normal people, the rest of us, we're not that different to each other, really, and I think that's why things like this, it doesn't matter the culture or the country or the geographic location. If kids are kids, kids are going to get into things like the Slenderman. But as far as I can sort of mainly think of, as far as specific locations, it's like forests, woods, places like that. Very often, in some of the cases, somebody feels compelled to go to the bedroom window and they see them in like the backyard or the front yard, sort of, if you're on a 2-story building, they're sort of staring upwards, or if it's, you've got a 1-story building, then they're sort of just looking straight at you, and it's almost like they know you're going to come to the window. So it's almost like the event is staged, they're already in the woods, they're already outside the window, as if they've already got you targeted.
Yeah, there's certain things that seems to seem like it triggers the fear in our subconscious, like, glowing eyes. I know you talk about that, and I don't want to give the book away, but you talk about some pretty interesting stuff about, like red eyes in the book a little bit, a blank face. This thing, I wonder why sometimes, Nick, that we don't like to be scared when we're scared, right? We hate it when we're actually feeling that kind of fear. But it's almost like that we strive for it, if that makes any sense. Black Sabbath said they didn't, make a good album till they started doing horror music,
Yeah. Well, everybody, well, I say everybody, a lot of us, enjoy watching horror movies. Because you watch a horror movie and it's not real fear, but you still kind of like to get that jolt, if something makes you jump in the movie or whatever. And, you jump, and what do? Then you laugh,
Yeah.
But we all like them. But when it's the real world, there's also that kind of angle of fear for a lot of people, because it's not like a movie you can turn off, or just, you watch the movie, then you put something else on, the news or whatever. It's not like that with these phenomena where they're constantly around you. So, but yeah, there is something in our minds where, fear, well, we know fear, is a massive source of entertainment with movies. But also, we have that angle as well of taking dangerous risks. Parachute jumping, or people go on a roller coaster. What do? They scream all the way through it, or pass out even, but they want to do it, so our minds are kind of complex in that sort of way, and that might have something to do with it. The idea of the Slender Man can be drawn in by the fear, because we do have this sort of love-hate relationship with fear.
It's like we want to squeeze the orange, but we don't want the, we don't want the juice. I've done that too, like go out to a haunted place or visit something. I'm here for an investigation. I hope I see something, and something really happens. Like you feel a hand on your shoulder. You don't. The next thing I know, I'm telling myself, I don't ever want to do this again. And then later, as I calm down, then I'm out doing it again. It's almost like some weird elementary thing that takes over.
Well, that's probably what in a way, that is exactly what it probably is, and unfortunately for us, the way our brains are kind of wired, they know that we probably won't leave it alone forever, and we will come back to it, because it's so addictive. It's kind of like the junkie who has to go every day without, just fighting not to have another fix. Right. It's kind of like that, where you really want to get involved with it, but you shouldn't, and sometimes your willpower's strong enough, and other times it isn't strong enough at all.
With you have a lot of fans, you've got a lot of books, a lot of great reviews, and I can tell you're a great writer. So it makes me wonder, what is it what boggles you the most? What do you think about the most? What is the biggest question in your head about reality or life, maybe?
Well, I would definitely say, for me, the thing that I kind of focus on most is when it gets personal. When I'm looking into things like the Slender Man or the Men in Black stories, which aren't anything like the movies, the real Men in Black. The movies kind of made them secret agents, but if you read most of the witness stories, they're sort of like paranormal and pale and skinny. They kind of look like well-dressed versions of the Walking Dead. They look ill and sick. So for me, the most fascinating angle, an intriguing angle, and also, it can get a bit hazardous, is when it starts to impact on you and you get this sense that either something's watching you, or you're being manipulated, or it's just getting its grips into you, which does happen a lot. And for me, yeah, it's disturbing, but on the other hand, it gets you closer to the phenomenon, and maybe it would allow us to tap into and understand more what it is. But it's kind of like a really dicey situation as to whether you should do it. But for me, that's sort of, when you have that interaction, then it becomes personal. That's probably the thing that sort of sticks in my mind more than anything else.
Like what makes you keep going after this, right? Why am I going after this? That's what I think sometimes.
Yeah, why
too.
do it? Yeah, why do I do it when I know it could sort of hit you back?
Yeah, everybody's playing golf, and this guy's, all he does, he fishes, and this guy likes his TV shows. Why am I so interested in the paranormal and spirit science, and why do I keep going after this thing?
One of the things I would say, and one of the reasons why I think I've been pretty much okay, apart from a few hazardous things, is that I actually have a lot of other interests, and I'm really good at switching off. It's like I like to do my writing on the book sort of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. I like to keep sort of like job hours, as I call them. I mean, I don't consider it a job. It's my passion, which I've sort of turned into a job, I guess. But it's a passion still, and so I like to sort of do 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and then I switch off. Unless I'm sort of promoting a book like now, doing radio, whatever. I literally stop at 5. I put the laptop into sleep mode. I forget about it all. Friday nights I might sort of, go out with a girlfriend to see a band. Saturday, me and a bunch of friends will go out to a soccer game. Sunday, meeting up for lunch or whatever. And I forget about it till Monday morning, So, and I think that actually helps when, you have a totally normal life as well. So people often say to me, "Did you see that new show last night? About UFOs?" I said, "No, I didn't see it." "Well, why not?" I was out seeing a Motley Crue tribute band or something. So that's how it works for me. I feel that doing the work, doing the research, but also being able to totally switch off, for me at least, that works well. So.
Awesome, man. That's really cool. I need to take your advice on that, actually, and switch it off a little bit. It makes everything so much better that way when it's not consuming you all the time,
Yeah, no, I don't think it's just the paranormal. I mean, it can be like anything in life, but, I mean, everybody's different. Some people thrive on it by doing it 24/7. There's nothing wrong with that. It's how each of us respond in different ways,
Right. Absolutely. Last question I'm going to take from the chat room. Catalina asked, Nick, have you ever had an ET experience ever?
No, I haven't. So I've had, like I said earlier in the show, those weird sleep paralysis experiences. Although I've not had sort of an alien encounter, there have been a lot of times when I've been researching the UFO phenomenon, and I've had a lot of synchronicities in relation to investigating the UFO phenomenon. So, maybe there's a connection there, but I actually haven't, an abduction experience or anything like that, no.
And what's next for you? You got some conferences coming up you're going to go to?
Yeah, I've actually got one March the 17th, Saturday, March the 17th. That's called, it's in the Texas town of Glen Rose, which is about an hour outside of Dallas, and it's called the Para-Unity Fest. That'll be on Saturday, March the 17th. Then in April, I'll be speaking on the weekend of the 14th. I'll be speaking at the Ozark UFO conference. And then the following weekend, which is April the 21st, I'll be speaking at the South Texas Bigfoot conference, which is just outside of Houston. So those are the next 3 up-and-coming conferences I've got.
Really cool. I'd love to see you speak at one, man. I hope I get to catch you at one. You never know with these kind of things. But I really want to thank you for coming on the show. And your website is nickredfern.fortean.blogspot.com, or is it just Nick Redfern? Did I say that wrong? I think I said that wrong.
Yeah, Nick Redfern Fortean, which is Fortean, nickredfernfortean.blogspot.com. And you can find me on Twitter, Nick Redfern UFO, and I'm on Facebook. There's about 7 or 8 Nick Redferns, but scroll down, and if you see the one who's got like a black beanie on and about 6 earrings, that's me.
Well, I gotta say, man, thank you for coming on Lighting the Void. I've always wanted to talk to you. It's been a real treasure to have this conversation with you, and I hope one day we can do it again, because I know you're going to keep writing.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I've been, had a good time, and we covered a lot of ground and a lot of good questions from the audience, which is always good, I like to get questions because, you can see where the listeners and the readers are coming from, what their thoughts and ideas are, so that's good.
Right. Thank you again, man. I hope we can do it again. This has been a pleasure.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'll be pleased to be on again.
All right, great. All right, guys, that was Nick Redfern. Go out and get that book, The Slenderman Mysteries. And like Tessa says in the chat room, good night, sleep tight, and don't let the Slenderman bite. Don't forget that this show was produced by the Fringe FM and cannot be rebroadcast or syndicated without written permission, and music was by Spaceboy at spaceboymusic.com. If you're listening live on the Fringe FM, Spaced Out Radio's up next. Thanks, guys.